What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a new video. Now today I wanted to show you guys a couple of really interesting things that I have not really shown before, but today the topic of today's video is going to be the Wild West and some really interesting artifacts. We're back at Historic Auto Attractions Museum in Roscoe, Illinois, and I've shown this place quite a few times, but each time I try to showcase something just a little bit different. But today we're focusing on, since we like historic graves and interesting things, cemetery tours, all that, there's something that I want to show you that ties into directly that. So let's go take a look at it. Now this place is really cool. I'll start by saying that. If you have not seen the full tour that I've done here, I will link it in the video, but there's a lot of really cool stuff here. And we're gonna start with this right here. If you're a fan of Gary Cooper, and he was one of the most legendary actors that came out of his time period, but this is his original grave marker. Now for a little bit of background, Gary Cooper was originally buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California, which I've taken you guys to a couple of times. He passed away May 13th of 1961. He was buried in Holy Cross, and his grave, this grave marker right here, marked where his body lied for 13 years. In May of 1974, Gary Cooper's remains were exhumed from this location and transferred to Sacred Heart Cemetery in New York at the request of his widow. But this grave marker went up on the auction block at Heritage Auctions and was purchased by Historic Auto Attractions here. Now, it's not too often that you get a chance to see something like this in this condition, but I've always found this to be a really interesting thing. They, this place finds a lot of really interesting things, but Gary Cooper, 1901 to 1961, so not a very long life, but he sure left a legacy. Now, they have a lot of other interesting things here too, Wild West related. This is John Wayne's toga saddle. It was made in 1941 for John Wayne by the Bentley and Gafford Saddle Company in Oklahoma City. And they have a couple of wax figures, because everybody needs wax figures in their life. And they have some other John Wayne items too. They have his decorative cigarette case and his personal shoehorn. It says engraved with the word Duke, which you can see. We'll zoom in right there if you can see that. And John Wayne's cowboy hat. Some pretty cool stuff. Over here they have Tom Mix's cowboy hat. And if that's not cool enough, they have Audie Murphy's Nudie's ostrich boots and his scarf. Those are pretty cool. Now, something else that's really interesting is this right here. This is a prop passenger train, coach, car, and caboose. Now, these were used by MGM when filming in the 1930s and 40s. And when you would watch a scene with a train and you thought that you were looking at an actual train, it was actually one of these that was just on a soundstage or wherever else they were filming. And you would actually believe that you were looking at a full-size train going down the tracks. A little bit of old school movie magic. They still do a lot of goofy things like that. We were just at Warner Brothers studio just a couple weeks ago. I haven't posted that video yet, but I'm going to very soon to show you a couple other interesting things that they also do, to make movie magic. Now, you can't think about the Wild West without thinking of, the old guns and outlaws. Here's John Coulter's shotgun. They have information down here that they have a historian here named Tony that goes back, and he will check the serial numbers of every weapon, and he will trace everything back to its roots to make sure that what they have here is the real deal. Here's one of Annie Oakley's shotguns. And this was a really interesting guy. John Slaughter, if you've never looked into his history, look him up. It's a really fascinating story. He was an interesting person. He was one of the kind of guys that if he didn't want you in his town, he would shoot you. and he wouldn't feel bad about it. That's one of his original shotguns. John Slaughter. This is a bank teller cage that was once robbed by the Jesse James gang. This was removed from a bank in New Hope, Kentucky. But take a look at this. The money orders thing on there. Could you imagine being back in the day though, and Jesse James and his gang comes in and just says, "Give me all your money." That actually happened right behind this cage. It's really cool to be able to see history like this. They even have the wagon wheel hubs from the Donner Party. Just some real interesting history. How cool is that? Here they have some interesting tools and other things from the time period. Which, if you think about it, it would have been a really interesting time to be alive, but kind of a scary time too, because if you got sick, a lot of things, you know, medical advances were not really there yet. And if you had some kind of an ailment, they would just pour whiskey down your throat and start sawing off your appendages. So quite a bit different than things are now. Now this is a brand new display. If you guys have seen some of my videos from this location, this is brand new this year. This is the Wild West. And a lot of these, the store frontages were saved from a local place called the Forest Hills Lodge. It was kind of a historic venue in Rockford, Illinois here. And they salvaged all this and they made, you know, they made kind of an interesting thing out of it. Now this is a replica of a marshal's office, how it would have looked. The marshal's hat in there. And if you were in the marshal's office, you were probably put in jail. Caution, do not attempt to feed baby rattlers. And they really are. Here's an old US mail coach. Wells Fargo and Company. Give you a little look on the inside of that, because really, how many times do you get a chance to take a look at things like this? And one of my other favorite things here, this is an original Conestoga wagon from the late 1790s. Now this thing, it took them 6 days, and if you think about how long this would take today, not very long. Lancaster to Philadelphia, they did it in this thing in 6 days. Back then, travel conditions were just horrific. But it's quite a ways up there, but I'm stretching as far as I can and hoping you can see what I cannot see. But a really interesting thing, the Conestoga wagon. If you're curious about the history, feel free to pause it and take a look. This is their Long Branch Saloon, and in here is movie props or TV show props. Now these are items from, this is the piano from Gunsmoke. This used to be in a different part of the museum. They've had this for a while, but the way that they redid things, it's really neat. There's James Arness's cowboy boots worn on Gunsmoke, and James Arness's hat used as Matt Dillon. A couple of his outfits back there. And here's a chair used by Doc Adams in Gunsmoke. Pretty neat stuff. Now some of my favorite things that they have in this museum are over here. Now this is a Winchester Model 1866 rifle that belonged to Buffalo Bill Cody. It's inscribed Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show. One of the most popular things that traveled around back then. An original Buffalo Bill Cody signature. And over here we have a trunk from his show from 1885. Some watch fobs. And this is a beaded deerskin jacket that belonged to Buffalo Bill Cody, dated 1894. Now, I don't know about you, but that thing does not look very comfortable. Maybe back in the day it was. Over here we have Wyatt Earp's saddle. Could you imagine just somebody randomly being able to say, I have Wyatt Earp's saddle, and I can prove it? How cool is this? And there's a 3-page letter from Josephine Earp right under Wyatt Earp's vest. It just doesn't get any cooler than that. Or maybe it does. Here is the Colt pistol that was owned by Sheriff James Glispin, and this is the gun that was used to shoot and kill Charlie Pitts. And just over here are some Jesse James relics. That right there is a Jesse James revolver that he threw in a river when he was trying to get away, and they found it years later, and they actually referenced that back to Jesse James. Now, how they actually do that in a gun in that condition, I have no idea, but that is really cool. Jesse James spurs. Now we have to end the video with this. I know I've shown you this in a couple videos before, but this is really neat if you have not seen it. There's plenty of new people on the channel if you haven't seen it. This is a hearse from the 1860s. Just get a load of this. There's a small coffin in there too. The lighting's a little off right now. But here is also a bill of sale for a funeral. This is what a funeral would have cost you back in 1902. You have the casket for $50, a $5 shave, $10 undertaker services, a hearse for $15, and 3 teams in a carriage for $10. $90 out the door. Now, hopefully you enjoyed this tour of the Wild West part of historic auto attractions. Back there is Elvis, and I will take you and show you more things from this location coming up. I did do a full tour, but things in here are always changing. They always have new things, and every time I'm in this area, I have to come by and check it out again because it is that neat. This is one of the most impressive collections in the country, although a lot of people have never heard of this place. But historic auto attractions in Roscoe, Illinois, if you're ever in the area, you can't go wrong. But that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining and watching, and we'll catch you on the next video. Take care, everybody.